we are here to speak to a group of students who are studying business or liberal arts, that's basically, I'm trying to think if any of you fall into a different category, but those are the subjects: business, liberal arts, social sciences, at university. So we're excited to explore what that experience is like. And tomorrow I will be doing a webinar with the Red Pen co-founder Mehta and my co-author of the book Acing Admissions. And we're going to speak about, the US admissions process and what it's like to apply to college in the US, and hopefully answer a lot of questions about, just about the process if you're thinking about, what it is like to get through it for the US, and what are some strategies you can use to plan. So that's what we're doing. And I'm Kim Dixit, the CEO and co-founder of the Red Pen. And we are based in Mumbai, India. We're independent education consultants with 9 years of experience advising applicants at all levels of education, as you can see here: early advising, undergraduate, postgraduate, MBA, and then boarding and day schools. So we do help families and students apply to college or whatever educational sort of path they're on at any age. So, and we have a group of consultants in our office, as you can see here, 70 team members from 9 different nationalities. They're based all over the world, but mostly in Mumbai. And but we advise applicants from all over the world. And as you can see here, we have our professional affiliations with different organizations, global organizations, so that we can sort of stay abreast of the latest admissions news and changes and happenings, which is much more important even in this time as things are changing really rapidly. As Arya said, he's not even sure when he'll go back to college, but we try to stay on top of things at the Red Pen. So today we are joined here by Arya, Bhatia, and I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves. So Arya, go ahead.
Hey guys, I'm Arya. I'm studying business administration with a minor in disruptive innovation and a certificate in food industry management at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles.
Great. And Atman?
I'm Atman. I'm studying political science at the University of Chicago. I'm going to enter my final year now in about a month's time.
Great, thank you. And Rosheen?
Hi, I'm Rosheen. I graduated from Ashoka University in May of this year, and I majored in history and international relations.
Great. And Taarika?
Hi, I'm Taarika. I'm a third-year student at the University of Toronto, and I'm majoring in cognitive science and double minoring in psychology and biology.
Great. Well, thank you, all of you, for joining us today. And I think I'm excited about, I think having such a sort of diverse group of you guys speaking to our audience today, because, I myself was a, social science major in college. And I find that as I'm advising, international students, sometimes it is the hardest sort of category of study to explain to people. Engineering, everybody understands. Business, mostly people understand, but I think Arya can kind of help us figure out where the slips are there. And then also, other pre-professional programs are very well understood, as opposed to sometimes, the social sciences or the art or the humanities or other subjects. So I'm excited to kind of hear from all of you and maybe, demystify what exactly these subjects are, what do you study, and what can you do with them. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to ask each of you a question. A set of questions, and you know what those questions are. But as you answer those, I would also like to know from you, when you chose this major, what attracted you to it, and is it what you expected it to be? So with that, I'm going to start with Arya. And Arya, can you just tell us a little bit about what is it like to study business, and is it what you expected? And I guess this question is coming from, again, the idea that I would say well over 40% of the students that I meet, their first answer might be that they want to study business, even if they have no idea what that's about. So why don't you tell us what it's about?
Yeah, sure. So I sort of feel like when I came to your office initially, I too was one of the 40% of the students. And I was trying to figure out whether I was going to do business because I had no other option, or whether I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And I think that's the case with a lot of business students. And because it's because the term business is so encompassing, But in all honesty, I think business entails, in a way, I would love to say whatever you wanted to, because you do have your common facets of marketing, entrepreneurship, finance, and things like that, which are specific majors and tracks that you can get into your particular institutions. But at the same time, I personally think that studying business is a way to explore your passions in whatever field they may be. If you're in, like, I know a lot of people who are pre-med and business, and basically they want to work at like pharmaceutical companies and work on the business side of things. Myself, I'm really interested in the food industry, and I'd really considered trying to go into culinary school. But at the same time, I realized eventually that I was really more interested in the industry as a whole and not particularly working as a chef. And I think that's what I mean when I say that business is a way for you to explore whatever passions, because at the end of the day, if something doesn't make sense on the balance sheet, it can't take off however strong your passions may be. So in all honesty, I think that's what business entails from my particular perspective. So when I did go to school, that is sort of, uh, I mean, it is what I expected, because if I could delve a little more into my particular experience, it went from, the way USC works and the way the business program works is that they have a range of classes, almost, if I could say, like 10 to 12 classes that are just all introductory classes into the different facets of business, such as marketing, sales, operations, finance, accounting. And once you sort of, through one of these classes, you figure out what your passion is, you can continue with, the stream that you choose in your upper division electives.
Great. I think that's really, sort of makes it clear that you can, you need to get those basic foundations out of the way, but you can also kind of introduce a lot of other different things. And I think your example of, the food industry and culinary interests and things like that are a great, kind of demonstrate that really well. So thank you for that. Now, my next question for you is about, your experience outside of the classroom. And I've spoken to you a lot. I know you really enjoy it. I know your university is particularly kind of strong there. So why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, sure. So, sorry, I'm just looking at my notes, which I've basically like emboldened experience outside the classroom in, because that's what I feel being a business student really adds value to me in a sense, because at the end of the day, there are different tracks in business where you could achieve a lot more inside the classroom than outside. However, me being an entrepreneurship student and choosing the entrepreneurship track, all my professors tell me that the best way you can learn is by going to the University of Hard Knocks. So basically just going out there in the real world and experiencing and failing over and over and over and over again until you actually, learn how to deal with failure and then sort of take those experiences and convert them into successes. So outside the classroom is I have sort of my clubs. Obviously, I'm part of the business technology group because today I feel like what's business without technology? And the pandemic has really showed us that tech-enabled businesses are the ones that are here to stay. Another thing that I do outside the classroom is I was actually a part of a very, very interesting engineering class where they basically got together 25 students from undergrad, grad degrees, and put all of us into like a think tank for a full year, gave us a budget of $10,000 each, took us to Greece 2 different times, and made us work with refugees and told us to solve at least one problem that the refugees have, may it be a product-driven business or a service-driven business. So that that is just one particular experience that I've had outside the classroom. But what that experience did for me was that it allowed me to work in a very interdisciplinary environment and understand how to work in, how to add a business perspective to a cross-functional team. And I think that those kind of experiences are extremely, extremely important when, you're trying to really learn about business itself, because like I said, it's all experiential. So yeah, I think that my experiences outside the classroom have been like, honestly great.
That's great. And I'm sure it was really gratifying also to, be working with refugees and doing things that maybe most business majors they don't maybe typically think that's what they're going to do in college.
Yeah, because in all honesty, I myself never thought I'd be working alongside, refugees and amongst engineers actually. And I remember always having the very, very fierce discussion between, should our product be top-notch quality or should we be reducing costs, right? And that is something that we're going to encounter in the real world on every front, right? Between the people that are service-driven, the people that are product-driven, versus the people that are profit-driven, right? And the people that have to make sure that the business is actually sustainable in a financial aspect. So I completely agree with you. It's not something that I expected when I got into college, but that is something that I'm grateful for. And I think like that should be everyone's attitude going into college, that we're here to experience and we're here to learn. And I think that one, just having that notion, especially when you're a business student, is so important because like I said, you see business in every aspect. And the thing with business is that it's a lot about exploring before you can really fix upon what your strengths are, figure out what your strengths are, and choose a particular track, if I could say. So exploration outside the classroom is very, very, very key to a business degree at college.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience. And I'm sure that we will get some questions in the Q&A box from our audience. So yes, I'm sorry, I didn't explain this to the audience. If you have questions for the panelists or you have questions that you'd like us to answer, at the end, after I go through my questions with these panelists, I will ask the audience questions. So please do post them in the Q&A box. Arya, I could go on talking to you all day, but I'm going to have to move to my next exciting panelist here, which is Atman. So Atman, welcome, and thank you for joining us today. You are studying political science at University of Chicago. I wanted to know about your experience at Chicago before we talk about your major as much, because I think there's a lot of, the reputation of University of Chicago is as a very intellectual place. Can you talk about the opportunities and experiences that you've had that demonstrate or defy this perception?
I think it's certainly the immediate reaction for people to associate it as a very intellectual place. However, I don't think that's necessarily always the correct one. And it's a funny question to answer because I think you could, in principle, have something which is like extremely intellectual, but in fact have it be extremely prosaic. And I think that's, at least by and large, I think that's my experience here, is that you could take something which has the potential to be extremely stimulating, but do it in a way that it's just very boring. And for example, this is a very new project. Recently, we have something called the Exoterra Imagination Lab, which is a project which is open to anyone. It's a year-long thing, and basically, the idea is that if you have a new planet, then how should we go about structuring the kind of social and political and scientific systems there? And at first it seems very much like the scientist's task to build a new world and on a new planet. But I think the explicit emphasis is on history majors and social science majors to come together and try to understand from their studies how the world should be constructed on a new planet. And I think, for example, in principle, I think can be a really stimulating exercise for both understanding the world that we live in and on the other hand, to understand what kind of world that we want to live in. I mean, it's to be seen what that experience will be like. But from my experience, I'm guessing it's probably going to be, the truth is going to be a lot less glorious than the dream. And I've certainly had a lot of conversations with professors, and I think we have a wonderful library which has really helped me to grow intellectually and has been the most stimulating. But on the other hand, I can also think of many classes that I took which just killed my interest in the field relentlessly. So.
That's very interesting. So in essence, you could say that, to some degree, it is what you make it, right? It is what you make of it. It is what you put in and get out of it, I guess, like anything, I suppose. So that reputation is something that each individual person can sort of embrace or defy, correct?
Yeah, I would say so, which is why I don't think it's a uniquely intellectual place, and I don't find it to be quite useful.
Yes, I suppose. Yeah, that's so. Yeah. It's true that I guess you can find that pocket anywhere. Any university should have intellectual experiences. That's the whole point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be quite a shame if any pedagogical process is not intellectually stimulating.
Right.
But I do think that university like UChicago, which is on the bigger side, definitely has a lot more resources and a lot more professors. Like I was mentioning, our library, it's really wonderful, and we have obviously have very very knowledgeable scholars and professors whom you can avail of, which is
That's great.
certainly an advantage.
So I'm going to move on to my next question now, which is, about your major. So I know that you originally went to University of Chicago to major in comparative literature, but now you've changed your major to political science. So can you tell us about that?
Well, I think so. Literature is undoubtedly still my first love, and so let me just talk about a little bit about the political science major, if it's helpful for people to understand what that is. So I think in here there are mostly four categories that it can fall into: American politics, simply for the reason that we're in America; international relations, political theory, or comparative politics. Now, comparative politics is, I'm not sure if everyone has heard of it, but it's mostly a residual category. If you want to study something which doesn't fall in the previous three fields, then that's comparative literature. And as you can see, I think it's a fairly flexible major in that what you want to make of it. Like comparative political scientists, for example, they would do ethnography in obscure places in the world, much like the anthropologist. And if you want to be more like a philosopher, let's say, you could do political theory. Or if you want to go down a statistical route, then you could, study American politics or international relations and crunch some numbers. So I think it's fairly, in some sense, it's a promiscuous major in that you could do whatever you really want from it, and which is what appeal, which is for me, which is what was the most appealing in that. I think it does accord an opportunity to think about the kind of things that I want to do, which I want to think about, such as an effort to understand the world, which I think is one of the questions I had. And on the other hand, it is also fairly flexible, so you could try to approach whatever question you're interested in from a variety of lenses, and also take a lot of classes in that. Now, undoubtedly, still, it's not that my interest in comparative literature as a whole has faded, and that's not why I've changed the major per se. Like I said, I think literature is still undoubtedly my first love. But on the one hand, I think it was a slightly pragmatic choice because doing comparative literature would definitely, by no means, it would predestine me for a career in academia, but it would definitely steer me in that direction. Not that I'm opposed to a career in academia, but I would like to keep some options open. And on the second hand, I remember talking to a professor once who said that no matter what you do, I think you should have something outside of that which you really enjoy doing as well. And I thought literature was not something bad to have outside of my primary interests. So I still read and keep up with my literary interests, but I study political science, and I think that's a great combination.
So are you able to take many electives in comparative literature, or other subjects that interest you, and do some of those count for your comparative politics major?
Well, I mean, they don't count for the major, but the political science major is fairly small, and there's only 12 courses. So in fact, I think I'm going to be mostly done with it next quarter, which means that I would have the last 2 quarters essentially free to do whatever I want. And that's also because I started my major a lot later because I wasn't very sure to begin with. So I think if someone is very sure of what major they're going to begin with, then they would have even more time at the end to take any electives that they would like. So I think certainly, even though it doesn't count towards the major, you certainly have many opportunities. I could take a class in musicology, for example.
Right. Are you working on any research projects with faculty or any internships? I'm sorry, I didn't prepare you for that question, but I guess you would know the answer.
No problem. For political science per se, or just in general?
Just generally.
Well, so yeah, as I worked with a history professor on the history of censorship for the past year or so. I'm going to be working with a professor next quarter on prehistoric state formation. And outside, so I think those are the more political ones. And outside of that, I've worked with the Center for Spatial Data Science, and that was this summer. And this summer, I'm also working with a documentary team on campus because I'm also interested in filmmaking.
That's great. I'm glad that I asked you that question because I think it gives the audience a sense of, you know, you can major in something, but you can do so many different things. And all of this is just about building, you know, perspectives and sort of experiences. So I think that's helpful. All right. Thank you so much, Atman. I'm going to move on now and speak to Rosheen, who is a recent graduate of Ashoka University in economics and history. Hi, Rosheen.
Hi.
Hi. So you, as I mentioned, you're a recent graduate and you've just finished your degree and you've decided to pursue a master's degree in management in Spain. So can you walk us through your thought process for that decision?
Yes. So basically, when I joined Ashoka initially, I thought I was going to major in economics, and I ended up realizing that that's not the discipline I wanted to go in at the moment. I wanted to choose business management, but Ashoka didn't offer that. But once I was in Ashoka, I realized that I wanted to stay on that liberal arts, like have that liberal arts foundation for the moment. So I chose history and international relations. But knowing that I want to do something in business later on, when I reached my second, third year in Ashoka, I realized that I wanted to do a master's degree in business management, so that I had some sort of foundation and the skills required before I started working. Because if I started working right after my undergrad in history and international relations, but I was going towards a more corporate job, I thought I didn't have all the skills I needed. But because I'm doing a master's now in business management and specializing in either international business, which kind of joins my international relations major in undergrad with my master's, or I'm going to be doing digital business, I think that'll make it easier for me to go down that corporate route later.
That's great. And why Spain?
I chose a bunch of different universities, and the program that I chose, Masters in Management, because it's a one-year program. And I knew I wanted like a shorter program for now because I wanted to get to work quicker. And Europe is specifically known for the Masters in Management. So I applied to a bunch of different places, and the university that I'm going to, IE University, is located in Madrid. And the location just turned out to be a bonus, but I applied to a bunch of different places in Europe, basically.
That's great. And I had another question about Spain. Yeah, okay. I forgot. No, but yeah, I mean, I think it's good that you, I know what I was going to ask you is, did you do any study abroad, any exchange programs while you were at Ashoka?
No, instead I did a lot of internships in my summers here, but I didn't do anything abroad. I
see. Great. So it's not like you went to Spain for abroad and you now want to go for your master's. That's not how.
I just went a long time ago on vacation and I was like, sure.
Great. No, Spain has, as you pointed out, and I think it's really important for people to know, it has among the best of these masters in management programs and some of the oldest ones as well. So it's a very good choice. Now, can you tell us a little bit about Ashoka and in particular, what was it like being one of the early graduates, in the batches of early graduates? And I think the reason I'm asking that is because I think that was probably felt risky, right? I know that at the time you had other options, but you decided to go ahead and go to Ashoka. So how was that?
So when I joined, I think my batch was the 4th or 5th batch at the university. And it did seem a little risky at the time because, I was had heard about it and knew, how the curriculum was structured or the faculty there. I heard really good reviews, especially about the faculty, because I think one of the best parts about Ashoka is that research in their specific specializations. So that really attracted me to Ashoka. And being among the earliest batches was interesting because although, you have that element of risk, you're not really sure about the university. But when I went there, it was really fun because the community is quite tight knit because there's so few people, you end up getting to know everyone on campus. And even in classes. So if we had because we had really small classes, all of us knew our professors really well. So it was really easy to just go up to them, questions, wanted to do a specific paper. Even if I wasn't doing a course with one professor, if I thought that they had done a lot of research in a field, I could go up to them and, ask whether they would do an ISM, which is an independent study module, for example, which is a course that you can yourself with a specific professor that you like. So you could do something like that because you know your professor so well and you have that kind of rapport because it's such a small community. Even in terms of not only academics, but co-curriculars, a lot of people were able to start their own clubs or start their own societies on campus because you have a lot more freedom and a lot more independence, and your relationship with the administration is so good that they kind of trust you a little bit because they know you. So you're able to have create a lot of opportunities for yourself.
That's great. Well, so then it sounds like it's only gotten better for you and for everybody else. So I think it was probably a great choice. Okay, let me move on to discuss now with Taarika. I hope you can all hear me. I feel like my connection is a little bit slow. Okay. Taarika, can you hear me? Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm going to move on and speak to Taarika, who's at the University of Toronto and studying cognitive science. So I think it's really interesting that you're studying cognitive science because I do meet so many students who are like, I want to study psychology. And I feel like maybe they might eventually end up in cognitive science. And I don't know if you fell into that category, but can you just talk about how you knew or what you knew about your major in high school in terms of the subjects, the extracurriculars, and that made you decide to major in cognitive science?
So I actually didn't want to do anything related to psychology, any of that, but I'd always been really interested in the brain and like neuroscience, and I did take like bio and IB, and I was like, I'm going to do something related to like biology, maybe medicine, but I came to uni and I took intro to psychology, intro to computer science, and intro to linguistics, and I really liked them. And cognitive science kind of like combines because it's a very interdisciplinary subject. So it's essentially 6 subjects, which is neuroscience, artificial intelligence, psychology, linguistics, anthropology, and philosophy. So it combined all 3, and I found that really interesting. And then I read a book called Behave by Robert Sapolsky, which essentially tells you like about human behavior, why humans behave that way, which is the psychology, how humans behave that way, which is like the neurotransmitters fire and stuff, which is neuroscience, and what the behavior is, which is anthropology and sociology. And I found that like really interesting because it's basically the embodiment of a liberal arts education. You can do all the subjects within one subject. So I thought that was just really cool. And I really like computer science and AI, which is what I hope to go into in the future. So I thought like that's just the best major for me. That's what I was suited for.
That's great. So you did have some exposure to understand where you were going. And what would you like to do after college, and how do you feel you're being prepared for it?
So I'm as confused because cognitive science is so like vast. There are many options. Like there's no dearth of options of what you can do, but like you can do data analytics, you can do software development, you can do research, like a lot of research. It's more academia oriented what I'm studying because I prefer research as a field. So I would probably hope to work at labs and stuff and work on like memory, perception, attention, the core of the human brain, like why we are the way we are, because I prefer the cognition side of it. But like there are many options, and I'm keeping my options open because I don't really know yet.
Great. Well, but you feel like you will have options.
Yeah, there are plenty of options. Like you can always go into like at the education field as well, like developing curriculums, all of that, speech pathology. There's sociology, like sociological research, scientific papers, all of that. Like my profs, I worked with my profs last year, to kind of like delve into perception and how perception works. And yeah, I was just working with them on that. So there's like plenty of research opportunities in the uni as well, which can help you separate the avenues.
Okay, great. And you said you're heading into your final year, right?
I'm heading into my third year, so it's
okay.
a 4-year
So you have
program.
two years to kind of finalize and decide.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. Well, I've gotten through all the questions that I had to ask you. And I want to just now go ahead and turn to the questions that I'm getting from the audience. There are quite a lot of them. And one that seems to be recurring are questions about what subjects you studied in high school. And I think what's very interesting about this panel actually is that all of you did the IB, correct? Yeah. So you all did the IB, and I think it would be interesting to hear a little bit about maybe if you took any subjects in particular that you thought prepared you specifically, or the overall sort of approach of the IB prepared you more. Would you like to say anything about that, Arya?
Yes. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Basically, yeah, I completely think that. Better. Okay.
Yeah, we
Is this
can
fine?
hear you. Yes.
Okay. So I think the IB definitely prepared me. It's something that I call my love-hate relationship with, because in all honesty, it tried me in ways that I never thought I could be tried in. Especially like the high school that I was in Bombay, which was Dhirubhai Ambani International School, was an extremely competitive high school. So it definitely tested me in a lot of ways. But it definitely gave me the work ethic that that is required. And till this day, I use a lot of the things that I learned with the IB when it comes to writing papers, when it comes to the things like your extended essays. And I personally, when it comes to subjects, I took economics, um, economics and global politics, which are two skills that are still helping me till this day. Firstly, because every school, I mean, I think a lot of universities in the US do have their general elective requirements. So everyone is supposed to, be able to have a sort of a liberal arts education. So that definitely helped me in a certain sense with those requirements. But the economics part helped me with my business program at USC.
And Arya, at any point were you tempted to take in high school business studies?
Yes, I was actually.
And were you severely dissuaded from the same?
Yes, I was very, very strongly dissuaded, because look, at the end of the day, it sounds funny. It's coming around, because I remember Kim telling me at the Red Pen that you don't have to take business to study business in college. Like, she said that very categorically. She said, don't take subjects. You don't have to take subjects that are like drag drop or you want to study in college. What they're looking for is that you've challenged yourself, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. And I remember you very, very clearly saying that to me. And that was basically what I chose my subject based on, subjects that would really challenge me.
Yeah, I mean, okay, that's great. Thank you so much. So I would like to go and ask each of you, Rosheen, what about your experience in the IB, and how did you think it prepared you for college? And did you, and if you want, students are asking what subjects you guys took. So if you want to say what subjects you took, you may.
Yeah, so firstly, I think IB really helps you, especially for liberal arts, because you get used to writing a lot of papers in IB. And for me, especially with history and IR, I had to write research papers constantly. So although in Ashoka in the first semester, you do take classes where they help you on the process of writing papers, I think IB really helps, like any university, liberal arts university especially. Because you feel have some background in that. And the subjects that I took were economics, business management and English HL, and math, Spanish, and biology SM.
Great. And Atman, what about you? Did you, do you remember the IB, what you took, what you feel like you got out of it, and how it helped you?
I'm trying to remember all my subjects, but I know I did take math and English literature at the higher level, and I had Spanish, physics, Spanish, physics, and filmmaking at SL, and I think I did math, econ, and English lit at the higher level. I would actually say answer no to both of your questions in the sense that I don't think it's by any means a prerequisite that you need to study the IB or have taken a particular subject to study any such thing, especially in the social sciences. Where I think as I was saying earlier, I think the distinctions between different social sciences are quite soft in the sense that I can't think of any good political scientist who doesn't have a good knowledge of history. Nor can I think of any good historian who is not mindful of politics. And in moreover, I think even in the method of these things, it's like most of the time you read, you think, and you write. So although IB was definitely helpful in the sense, as Rosheen was saying, that we did a good amount of writing and reading and analysis, but by no means do I think that's necessary. And I would just suggest that I think any educational program which allows you to think critically and doesn't impose a kind of mechanism on you, I think that's probably the way to go.
Great, that's a good perspective, because somebody did ask if he or she should stay in, should transfer into the IB or stick with APs and I can't remember the curriculum, but I think you're right. It's not that any one curriculum is better than another. And like you said, it's more of what you get out of it and how it challenges you in the right ways. So that's really what's important. Taarika, do you want to tell us about your IB experience?
Sure. So I did chemistry, bio, and business at the higher level, and English, Spanish, and math at the standard level. And I think it has been really useful, especially in the writing aspect. Like Arya also said, definitely, I think like research papers and stuff is something cognitive science is based on. Like if you can't write a paper, you're not going to be able to do that well, because like its foundation is on reading and writing papers. So I think it really helped in that. It really helped in time management, because I do think like you're able to structure and like give a certain timeline to what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and all of that. So I think it was really helpful. Like Atman said, I don't really know about like ISC and like HSC and all of that, but a lot of my friends here have done that and they're coping perfectly fine as well. So I do think it's what you make of the experience. I don't think there's a set rule that you have to do IB if you want to come abroad. Do whatever suits you best.
Great.
I think that works.
Okay. Rosheen, I'm getting a lot of questions for you about Ashoka. So let me take a few minutes to get those answered. One is about Sonipat. Did the city in any way affect your opportunities outside of the classroom?
Right. So for anyone who doesn't know, Ashoka is around an hour and a half away from Delhi. So there is obviously, like, it has to be acknowledged that because it's so far away, if you were to do an internship in Delhi, it would be a lot more difficult. So a lot of people either would do that in the winter vacations or the summer vacations, but a lot of people in Ashoka also, if they want to do, for example, social service work, or if they want to do a research project, they kind of base it in Sonipat. So you have a lot of, I don't know how to, basically you have a lot of opportunity there as well. So if you go right outside campus, there are various communities living there. So if you were to do a research project, you would have, people and sources to do it with there itself. So it's not like if you limit yourself to the city, you're also limiting the things you can do. So I guess the location will obviously matter, because if you want to go to the city itself, it is far. But if you're talking about the kinds of things you can do, it really is a matter of, I think, like Arya said, what you make of it. So the location is, it has both pros and cons.
Great. And what about, someone is asking specifically about when you study international relations, what do you study? What were some courses? What were some topics? What is international relations essentially?
So it's a really broad discipline. Let me give you a few examples of some courses that I did. So in my last semester, I did courses on geopolitics of South Asia, or global capitalism in the 20th century, or even gender and global politics. So IR is extremely broad. It kind of is just more about the connections of politics and relations that different countries can have, but the kind of field that you're looking within that, like there are many options about what you want to study in that.
Okay. And then the final Ashoka question for now is about what is Ashoka looking for in students? And I'm sure that's changed over the years that you were there. And did you find the admissions process very rigorous?
Okay, it is quite competitive. So with grades, I don't think there's any cutoff, or at least there wasn't when I went. But your grades do have to be at a certain level. Apart I think all the other panelists would also say that for their university. In terms of my interview, so before the Ashoka interview, I had given a lot of interviews for US and Canadian universities. And in my experience, what that tended to be was more about the interviewer getting to know me. But when I did the Ashoka, it was really rigorous because they were asking me quite objective questions. So they would ask me, because like I said, I wanted to major in economics at the time, right? So they were asking me, okay, tell me about some event in the economic sphere that happened in the past 10 years. Describe it for me. What took place, in what order did it take place? Or they would ask me if I had to set up a business, how would I use my resources, things like that. But I think that was a very subjective experience, because when I spoke to other people at Ashoka, some had similar experiences. Some said theirs was also a very get to know you type thing. Mm-hmm. So I think it really depends on who you get as your interviewer.
Yeah.
But even though I thought my interview was really rigorous, I think it's more about how you answer it instead of what you answer. So just take confidence in what you're saying, try to back up your answers with some sort of logical reasoning. It doesn't necessarily have to be right. And I think they'll notice the effort as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I have a question here from Sahil, who's asking Taarika, Atman, and Arya. Did any of you apply early decision to your college? And do you have a recommendation about that? Arya? That's easy for you. USC doesn't have early decision, so.
I was going to say that, but I mean, I was going to ask you if I could talk about Cornell, but it's fine.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually applied early decision to Cornell. I was absolutely gung-ho about it. And in hindsight, if there's anything I can say about the early decision process, it is only one that it is very hard, I think, when you're applying to college to make a very sound decision in terms of the fact that look at things in an unbiased way. But I personally think that I was maybe a little too drawn away with with the name and the fame associated with certain colleges. And I'm very glad that I ended up at USC, which means that I obviously didn't get into my early decision university.
Okay, so you don't think that the early decision is all the hype it's made out to be?
I mean, okay, if it's the #1 program in let's say pharmacy, go for it. And that's exactly your life's calling, go for it. But even if you have a 1% doubt, which I personally did, I never listened to that part of me, and I just applied to Cornell. And just hearing from, my friends and, who are there right now, and just a lot of people who did apply to their early decision and did get in, there's a lot of sort of, in hindsight, people are not very sure if that was the right decision for them. And, I think in a way, this might sound cliched, but the right college does find you. So I also see why I think USC doesn't have an early decisions process. And I kind of respect and value that, because, they really want kids to land up in the place that, they'll be best for and will be best for them as well. So I'm kind of against the early decision process, if anyone asks me personally. Yeah.
All right. Atman, would you like to answer that question?
So yeah, I did apply early decision to UChicago, but I think it's more a question for, I'm not sure what the pros and cons are, because I think it's more a question for the admissions department. I applied ED here just because I think so. Two things here. I was not very sure what I wanted to do either. So on the one hand, I knew that, like I was saying earlier, UChicago certainly has the resources to allow you to pursue whatever you want, whether it's inside the class or outside it. And on the second hand, I think UChicago does have the core curriculum,
Mhm.
which, although, like I was saying, in principle, it can sound very fantastic, but in fact, very different. But nonetheless, I still think that the core curriculum exposes you to a breadth of subjects, which otherwise you might not be exposed to. Like if not for the core curriculum, I might not have taken classes in physics, for example, because it doesn't really fall under the domain of my interests. But nonetheless, I still took them. I still think they were like fairly enriching. I don't see any reason why someone should not do it unless they're like very opposed to it. So I mean, I think it's a question that needs to be answered in concrete situations by the student who's applying.
Yeah.
And as to what its pros and cons are, I'm not sure because I'm not on the admissions.
Yeah.
Board.
Yes. Okay. Great. Thank you. I want to ask you because Taarika, I'll let you answer the question, but I think I know what your answer will be about early decision. Go ahead.
Yeah, we don't have an early decision at U of T either. It's just regular. I just applied like the day before because the admission process is pretty easy. So
Okay.
We don't have an early decision.
But once you got the admission, you felt it was the kind of the place for you.
Actually, funny story. So I was supposed to go to Hong Kong University, and like I didn't accept my U of T admission. I didn't have residence, and then I was just like, we were going to the US for a vacation. So I was like, okay, like I'll just go see U of T. And then I saw the uni, and I spoke to a few people, and I just absolutely fell in love with the city. And then I changed my mind like 2 months before I was supposed to come to uni.
Wow.
And yeah, they were really helpful about that. They did give me residence. They fixed everything, orientation, all of that. And then I came here, and yeah, it has been the right decision for sure.
Excellent. Well, I think we could probably ask you it's a very unique place. So I'm sure we could go on asking you questions about it all day, but I'm trying to get to all these audience questions. Atman, I know that Rosheen kind of spoke about it and you said a little bit about it. Do you want to answer the question about what does political science entail? A few people are asking that question, but I think you've made it clear that it is this and that. And so, but I'll let you answer.
Yeah, I think it's this and that. That's certainly in its method, and that, like I was saying, it doesn't make sense to study political science without a historical understanding of what you're studying per se. But like I was saying earlier, so at least as far as I know, by and large, it has like 4 sections: American politics, which is for no other reason that we're in America, which is to do with anything relating to like the institutional structures of the political system here. For example, if you would like to study elections and you want to study what makes people vote, then you could, that falls under the domain of political science. If you want to study what makes certain legislators vote on certain bills in ways, then I think that also would fall under the domain of political science. In political theory, on the other hand, you're trying to think about what are the theoretical concepts that go into organizing a certain political society. You could ask, for example, what does it really mean to be free? What does equality mean? Is it formal equality in the sense that everyone gets the same thing, or is it something which is more equitable in the sense that in the kind of society we live in, which has different kinds of hierarchies, you would want to like allow people different sort of resources so they have the same chance. So I think these are the kind of questions that you could answer in political theory. You could ask, for example, what does it mean to be just? For international relations, I think at least all the IR classes I've taken so far in UChicago, it's entirely about how do states interact with each other and how do they share a common resource, which is the earth. And there are lots of theories about security and what kind of concerns do nation states have. And lastly, for comparative politics, like I was saying, it's more of a residual category, which is anything that doesn't fall in the previous 3 would be the comparative political scientist's interest. And for example, if you would want to do field work, like I did study with a professor who did field work in some drug gangs in Brazil. And if you want to do that kind of an ethnography to understand how they're organizing their system and why they behave in a certain way, I think that will also fall, and it could fall under the domain of political science, or it could also you could also do this as an anthropologist. I think I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. I think that's really interesting. All of those kind of cross connections, and also just the sort of the like you said, studying elections or something very specific is all encompassed in political science. So that's quite interesting. One question I wanted to ask all of you. There's so many questions, but I think we have maybe 10 minutes more, so I'll see what I can do. Is that studying abroad, and even Rosheen, you were away from your family. How I really wanted to ask this question, because I think a lot of times we talk about, going abroad for college and a big deal and getting in and, preparing for it. But there's a real reality that sets in when you go and you're there and you have to actually live alone and make new friends and deal with rigorous academics and things like that. So I wanted you guys to speak a little bit about what is the process actually like of that sort of transition or rite of passage or whatever you want to call it. So why don't I start with Taarika?
Okay, so it is hard. Like, I'm not going to say it's easy. I was pretty homesick the first whole year. Like, it didn't even take me one semester. It took me the entire year. But I think if you like jump right into it, like you get distracted by academics, you have your club meetings. Like, I'm a part of 3 different clubs, and it does take a lot of my time. So I don't like have to focus on, oh, I miss my family, and you can always, they're just one call away. So like you can always FaceTime, like WhatsApp call, whatever.
Now that's even
So
more normal to just speak to everyone virtually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It doesn't really feel that bad if you're doing other things to distract yourself. And of course, like you can always tell, like, there's mental health resources and stuff. There are a lot of places you can call. There's health and wellness clinics. You can always drop in. They'll always be there for you to help you. The community is like, you will find really nice friends who will be able to support you as well. There'll be 100 other people who are homesick as well. So it's like you have a lot of people who are in the same boat. So that's always really comforting to know that there's people who are facing that with you.
Great. Rosheen, what about you? Did you experience any of that being away from home?
Yeah, so initially I think almost everyone, like Taarika said, faces it, and there's lots of other people in the same boat as you. But it's just a matter of that you can't really prepare yourself for something like that until you're there. You just have to experience it, and eventually you kind of get used to it. You're in a lot of different activities or in a lot of different classes, and if you just keep in mind that this is a new experience and it's supposed to be different from home, and you have a lot of support if you seek it, it's quite good, and it's quite easy to adjust to after a while.
Great. All right, Arya, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would completely agree with what Rosheen and Taarika said. I think, especially from what Rosheen said, that the mentality is something that's very important, because I myself absolutely loved it right from the get-go. Right from the point my parents like dropped me off and like left, I was like haywire, and I absolutely loved it, because at the end of the day, I think I went with the mentality that, I'm here to expose myself and make the best of this opportunity. And FaceTime and WhatsApp are always there, and I can so even when you're it was definitely something that helped. But at the same time, I think it's all about your mentality. And I think, like, if you are going abroad, and it's something I answered in the questions as well, if you are going abroad, like, one of the biggest learnings you're ever going to have is to be able to firstly interact with a different culture. And I think that is so important, especially in a place like business, right, where you need to be able to step outside your comfort zone. And if you take it with that perspective, I think there's great things that can happen. Obviously, we do get homesick, but it's all about the mentality. I couldn't agree more with what she said.
Great. And Atman, finally, if you have anything to add to this, and I have another question for you afterwards.
Not too much. Just that, I mean, I went to boarding school for a couple of years before as well, so I think it wasn't as much of a change for me to live away from my family. But I would say that I think it's important to do that, because I think at this age, to some extent, all of us are trying to figure out what to do with our lives. And I think living by yourself in college and exposing yourself to different ideas, like Arya was saying, is important, because it does allow you this, it does accord you the space to select what kind of life you want to live. So I think it's quite important. It might be painful, but I think it's necessary.
Yeah. The question I wanted to ask you, someone's asking on here about, do you think it is important to take sciences if you want to study in the liberal arts? So I just wanted to ask you specifically that question because, I mean, I think for Taarika, it's obvious she would have had to, she needs science for her degree. And I wonder, but you mentioned about studying physics. So, I mean, what do you think that studying those other subjects that, technically are not required does, or why is that valuable?
Well, I would say that like it's worth recognizing that like these sharp distinctions between disciplines is quite a recent thing historically, and if we go back not too many years, like in some frame not too many years ago, it was not uncommon for people to write poetry and be mathematicians on the side. And I think maybe now our instinct is to think that they're necessarily opposed, but I don't think it has to be that way. So I think that, for example, even when you're studying history or international relations or political science, for me, I think at least it's been useful for me to try to approach it with a mode of reasoning that the science, like learning science and engaging with the scientific process, has allowed me to explore, and sometimes vice versa. I think even though science can be misinterpreted sometimes as being fairly mechanical and very technical and analytical in how it's approached, I think you do need an extraordinary amount of creativity. So which I think reading and engaging with the social sciences and theory, political theory and philosophy really do help. So I do think not only do I not think that like there's a necessary opposition between science and liberal arts, but I think that it really helps to study both.
Great. Rosheen, what about you? Because I think Ashoka would have maybe had less in terms of sort of those broader requirements, where as a history and IR major, you would have had to take any science. But do you feel like it was valuable? It taught you certain perspectives?
So there's no requirement, especially for a major for history and IR. I didn't need to take a science, but a big reason that I took science in high school was that I really enjoyed biology. So I think someone mentioned you don't need to take courses that you in high school that you think you're going to be taking later on in university. So in terms of interest, that's why I took biology. And again, with IB, I had to do a lot of research for my bio internal assessment paper. So again, I think that helped me. But in terms of content, of course, with history and IR, there's not really a lot of parallel there.
Yeah. But in terms of the way of thinking and the research and just the sort of process, it helped you.
I think most courses in IB, you'd find that useful.
Yeah. Okay, great. We have just another minute here. Arya, I wanted you to talk to people about something that you mentioned to me earlier about USC, which is that the connection between alumni and current students. And what has that been like, and how is it only for business majors? Is it something that continues? Was it only as a freshman? What is that? I think that's a very unique feature about USC, about business, and maybe just relating that will help people understand the importance of looking into all these things when they choose a college and when they choose a major.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with what you said, and thank you for asking me this question, because I think there's a lot of factors that people should consider before applying to a college or choosing where to go. And this is something that I particularly was something that I was not aware about when I got into USC or decided to enroll. But USC has, for those of you that don't know, like USC has like a very big sports program. So our football program is like one of the top in the nation, and it brings back thousands of alumni multiple times a year for the games. And what that means is that the alumni are extremely invested in USC itself. And we have programs across the board that range from there's like a career advising like mentorship, alumni mentorship, which is where you're linked with one alumni for the course of a year, someone that interviews you, and you get to pick them from like a list of over like a few hundreds, and they're particularly in your field and things like that. So obviously from that perspective itself, like from the mentorship, it really is helpful. And this is specifically for USC, for the business school. But like for the rest of USC, this is like, the alumni is very, very close for every school within USC. And we have a phrase that says Trojans hire Trojans. And it basically means what it means. And it just reinforces the fact that alumni are really there for you. I actually, just to give you guys an example of what that means, is I always wear my USC sweatshirt when I'm traveling across the world. This year I went to Egypt, and in the middle of like literally nowhere, I had someone stop me and be like, "Oh, do you go to USC? Like, I graduated 5 years ago from the business school." And I was like, "Oh, no way." And he's like, "Oh, are like XYZ professors still there?" And I was like, yeah, like they taught me this last semester. And he was like, "Oh my God, no way." And he took me to his restaurant, and like we had like a 11-course meal. Like it's down to that. And obviously on the professional front, I don't need to say anything if this is what they are like personally. So on the professional front, you walk in anywhere and you just do that, which is our like fight on. People's demeanors change like 180 degrees, whether you are in the US or in India. I've actually, my dad took me to a meeting where one of his clients was, a Trojan. And I don't know if that helped him secure the deal, but I would love to say that it did. So
Great.
It helps you in crazy ways. That's all I can say.
Right. Great. So that's really interesting. I'm sure you would all have similar stories about alumni and the way that maybe not you yet, Rosheen, but you'll get there. But I think that is something to keep in mind, is that, and Taarika, I know with U of T, the college system really keeps people very tight. And, these are all sort of the peripheral advantages of college that people should think about as they decide where to go. I think we're out of time, and I want to thank all of you for coming and for joining us and sharing your experience. It's really, really been valuable, and we've had a great audience and tons of questions that we didn't get to answer. But I do encourage people, if you have further questions, or you want to get in touch with us or get in touch with one of the students, please reach out to us and follow us on our social handles, and we will hopefully see you all tomorrow. Thank you so much.